I think the title pretty much sums that up pretty good. Any doubt now? The question is probably not. This is the DraftKings Wildcat podcast on PHNX. John Schuster and Brad Allis. Shu and Brad filling in today. Mike Luke has some other engagements, so we're hopefully not going to run this completely into the ground. Join us. Get involved in the conversation. We'll try to take as much as we possibly can. But in case there are some technical issues here and there, apologies just in case in advance. Before we get going and talk about a phenomenally entertaining basketball game, I want to remind you about the DraftKings Sportsbook app. And on DraftKings, the big special that is taking place right now for new customers, new subscribers. All you have to do, the easy part, just get the DraftKings Sportsbook app. It's easy to download on Android and iPhone. And when you do, as a new customer, bet $1 on any NFL team to score, you get $100 in free bets. It's that easy. It's the nice introductory promo offer. Keep in mind, that's for Arizona only, 21 and above. You got a gambling problem, and we hope you don't. Let's be responsible here because this is fun. 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Again, John Schuster along with Brad Allis, and looking forward to your comments. We're seeing some of them now. And one of them said out of the gate, Brad, this was a fun game and a resilient game. There was a lot of positives in addition to the bottom line with Arizona winning 83-79 in essence on a road game against a really good basketball team in an exciting venue. The Wildcats showed great character tonight and figured out a way to get a W. It's hard to come up with some relative negatives after this performance. The Wildcats showing great character, great resilience, and Brad, safe to say now that Arizona basketball is for real and for real fast.
Yeah, and granted, this is probably going to be the toughest environment they play all season unless Oregon figures it out, because I don't know if they're going to be packing the mat as a 8-5 type basketball team. Paulie's not quite back yet. So this is probably, again, the toughest environment, the toughest travel they're probably going to have unless something happens in the state of Washington in January. But other than that, you look at what they did, able to get the win. It took really a pretty freakish shooting night by Illinois because most of those were well guarded. Or some of them were conceded because of the double team, but a lot of those were hand-in-the-face threes. They shot, 45%? I didn't look at the final numbers.
It was at least 15. They made at least 15 threes.
And Arizona not only, it was, I think the final number, 16-36, so 44%. Not many teams can shoot 44% wide open, much less with a contested. And to go with that, with the travel, with a lot of these guys, if not all of them, facing this kind of environment for the first time. At least in North American soil. The fact that they were in this game even, had they even lost by 2, let's say, but that would have been a win for me. Getting the actual W on the road is phenomenal. And the fact that they were able to weather the 19-0 run, weather a lot of calls not going their way, weather, a really rough first half by Kerr Kriisa. And it was about the time I think that Fox figured out their cameras that Kerr Kriisa came alive. Maybe he just didn't want to. That one baseline camera looked like the Sybil Shepherd cam from Moonlighting, covered in Vaseline. It was weird. But yeah, all in all, I don't know what else you could take away from this game because this looks, at least to me, eyeball test, the best team they've played. I know.
I don't think there's any question about that.
I mean, this team's better than Michigan. Obviously, Wichita State. Wyoming so far, those are the good teams. And the fact is they were able to kind of do what they wanted to Coburn. I know he had that stretch where he had 6 in a row. He was kind of allowed to play bully ball. But other than that, other than the 3-point shooting, which again, I thought most of it was well guarded. This is a big win for Arizona.
See, that's one of the interesting things, and I think it's reason for discussion as Arizona reviews the video here, Brad, is that there was a lot of talk, at least on the broadcast, about how Arizona goes, underneath the screen a lot. They were getting locked, and Frazier and Plummer got hot. And that happens at the college level, and I think it's something as you look ahead a little bit, you start to maybe try to pinpoint good guard play and what teams can shoot from 3-point range. And if that's the case, how does Arizona have to adjust that, or does it adjust that in different ways? I think that's one of the things that may be involved in the evolution. But one of the things you touched on was the 19-0 run by Illinois. We've talked about Arizona going on, and I know you like to use this phrase fairly frequently, the runs of death. Illinois was in danger of putting one on Arizona. And despite that, the Wildcats just kind of hung around, and in the last 8 minutes or so, got back into the game and ultimately wore them down. That's a nice character performance for an Arizona team that didn't have everything necessarily going its way tonight.
Yeah, well, they countered that. I think it was with a 9-0 or 10-0 run themselves, and they held Illinois without a field goal, I think the final 7 minutes. So once that run was over, Arizona kicked the defense. And now that run for Illinois was very similar to an Arizona run. Arizona was a little careless with the basketball, had some defensive lapses during that stretch. And that, I think, contributed to it. You shored that up. And then Arizona countered. And credit both teams. Every time one of the other teams, punched each other in the face, the other team was able to answer with a run of their own. And that's, to me, it reminded me of a really good tournament game, except for, the fact that you had the Illinois students there. But that is the kind of game both teams are going to have to play, whether it comes to league play, the Big Ten looks like a meat grinder this year, or come tournament time, because they're games of runs, and both teams over and over and over answered those runs, and that was what makes it a fun game.
Scott made a point on the comment section, and feel free to comment below. We'll get to as many as we possibly can. But he made, I thought, a very good comment, and you touched on it as well, Brad, in regards to Kriisa, who was pretty much a non-factor in the first half and stepped up significantly in the second half. So now you're seeing this was an interesting game in that so far this season, Arizona's been able to do more or less what it wanted to do on the offensive end. Today, there was a lot more half court. And as a result, it kind of devolved into one-on-one play sometimes, which isn't always the best thing. But I think what we've learned is that you have a guy in Mathurin who can get a bucket a lot of times when you need it. He finished with 29 points, 30 points tonight, I believe. Tubelis was very good at times. And Kriisa hit monster shots to keep Arizona in the game in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, we saw this also. The Arizona team misses a lot of easy buckets tonight that I think is going to end up. I think if we go back and review the film, my guess is half of those, I would say they missed 7 or 8 at the hoop. And probably half of those would have been assisted buckets, maybe more. So I think that's going to skew the numbers a little bit. But what I think we saw here is that, at least so far, Kerr Kriisa likes being the villain. He likes being the heel. He hit I think it was the big three. It might have been the runner, and he stared down. It looked like the cheerleaders. Now he's probably trying to pass his number on. He'll probably mouth the number because that's what I just picture that guy running roughshod on the campus.
Do you feel like is it the John Cusack movie where they go to the ski resort and the blonde guy who's in Karate Kid is the bad ski guy? Kerr Kriisa feels like he's that guy from that kind of classic 80s movie. But man,
the whole group of the international guys feel like that. Like I picture Pelle Larsson being the guys like, yeah, put him in the body bag. They're Cobra Kai. Tubelis, they walk into frat parties and the frat guys are just like, oh no. Hide the women. But Kriisa seems to thrive on that. He did it a little bit in Vegas, with the Michigan fans and to a lesser extent the Wichita State fans. The other guy to me, Tubelis, is a load because he can put the ball on the floor. And not many guys his size can defend it. I think it's Hawkins or Hankins. He did an okay job, but when they needed a bucket in the first half, it was Tubelis on the floor, putting the ball down on the floor that seemed to get it. And most of the guys in the Pac-12 who can defend that are going to give up 3 inches and 30 pounds. They're those, combo forward types. When Tubelis is a legit 6'10", 230, 240?
Right.
But the fact that he can put the ball on the floor, I think is something that, again, you have, I think, 3 guys. That was the question. Who's the guy who can get you the key bucket when I think they got 3 guys who can, and they're all in totally different ways. When Christian Koloko can be the complementary scorer, that's a good place to be.
We're going to get to Sean's comment in a moment. And folks, if you're watching on Twitter right now, you can head over to YouTube and join us live and participate in the conversation. We're at YouTube now. I know there's a link on Twitter if you want to get involved in some of the comments. And Sean was talking about one of the guys we haven't mentioned entirely, who tonight, if you look at it from an individual standpoint as well, he is the most noteworthy. Yeah, that's not a fair assessment. I was going to say he was the most noteworthy. There are positives and there are negatives guy, and that's Christian Koloko, and I'll get to that in a moment. Terry struggled, but did a couple good things. Larson, same, got into foul trouble, struggled a little bit in the first half, and then ultimately redeemed himself on some nice plays, which is a really good thing that Arizona kind of worked through some difficulties. Koloko, however, Brad, was very interesting tonight. And Sean asked and wanted to ask you specifically whether you thought that Koloko at this stage was an NBA-ready player or a guy who can play at the next level. And if I'm paraphrasing there a little bit, apologies, but you know the gist of where we're going there. Before I get to that, though, Koloko was, to me, both frustrating and excellent. Defensively, he was really good when given the opportunity and blocking consecutive shots and making things difficult on Kingston. And you can see why scouts struggle with what Kingston's game is at the next level, because there are a lot of guys like Koloko who can defend athletically at the next level. And I like Kingston a lot. He had another double-double tonight. He makes things very difficult. You always have to pay attention to him on the floor. But on the offensive end, and this to me has happened over the course of the last 2 or 3 games, it looks like Koloko is having hand issues again. This was not a problem at the beginning of the year, but it looks like he is not comfortable on that end of the floor. Fortunately, he's been good for Arizona defensively. However, there were a couple moments late in the game, last 3 minutes, where he was unable to lock down a defensive rebound that could have quelled an Illinois possession and maybe given Arizona a little bit more cushion as opposed to what they ultimately needed with the 4-point W.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that is just getting beat up the whole game. I mean, Coburn is a load. I mean, and again, I know, Koloko goes against Omar Ballo in practice, but that's different. He's going to have 2 big bruises on his pecs tomorrow from those shoulders that Coburn was able to drop. So I'm not ready to write off Koloko's hands because that's a tough game for him. That's a tough match. That's one of those where I don't think you expect much offensively from him because his whole concentration, and he held him 16. Now 13 rebounds, but I was reading some of the Illinois boards, and they were like, I think Jason Shear wrote, if they can hold them to 15, Arizona wins, and they all thought it was hysterical that they thought Arizona could hold them to 15. Well, they couldn't. It was 16, and 8 came late, and 2 of those I still think were offensive fouls.
Absolutely, they were.
Yeah, because apparently, Tubelis was called for a lot less. Sorry, the dog keeps dragging my tail.
This is one of those frustrating games, and sorry to step in, Brad, because I know that there are going to be folks who talk about this from an officiating standpoint. I didn't think the officiating was good tonight, and those are examples there where things get really frustrating. It's not Kingston's fault. If you can get away with it, you do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that I remember in the Shaq era of the NBA, that's all Shaquille O'Neal would do. He'd just run over people, get to the basket, hit a dunk, and refs would let him do it. And it's like, well, I mean, there are still tenets of rules that you're supposed to play within. And to me, Kingston just bowled himself in there. The other defender had position, and it wasn't called appropriately. All of that.
But I would actually say the difference is now there's that emphasis on the drop shoulder. When Shaq played, you could drop there's a lot of videos or still photos that you and I used to do when we did cat tracks. How many times did we see Richard Jefferson with a shoulder in some guy's chest, or Jason Gardner with it's called differently now. And now the minute you make contact with that shoulder, they're pretty much going to call you for the offensive foul unless you're a 270-pound big man, which I've seen at other levels too. In other places. But I think the fact that Koloko was able to hold him to 16, Koloko and Ballo, is a big thing for why Arizona won this game.
Yeah, it's an excellent number. Kingston averages 23 and 12, and he's a great player and a difference maker at the college level. And Arizona defensively more than held its own. Still taking comments, so feel free
Let
to
me go back to the Koloko NBA thing.
Sure.
I think
Sir.
I think right now, if somehow Koloko left college right now and could sign an NBA free agent contract, someone would pick him up to be that long defender off the bench. But if he's ever going to make a long career in the NBA, he's got to develop the face-up jumper. And we've seen glimpses of it. But the fact is, even though he's 7'1", he is going to always be thinner than some guys. Ayton would bully him. Now, granted, the NBA's gotten away from that. But I think, yes, he's an NBA player. But if he's going to be a 10-year NBA player, he's got to develop a jump shot, because that's where the NBA is right now. Conversely, Coburn, he reminds me of is Jahlil Okafor, the Duke player, who went, I think, 2nd or 3rd overall to Philly and couldn't find a place in the modern NBA. In the 80s, Jahlil Okafor would be an all-star, an all-NBA guy. But unfortunately, some guys are born at the wrong time. I always said if Jason Gardner played in the 70s, he would have been a 15-year NBA guy. He and Tiny Archibald, but he wasn't. He was a guy when point guards were suddenly 6'3", and that's why he's coaching still at Arizona. But that's my thought. My thought is, Koloko has NBA athleticism, but I think he's got to have an offensive game to kind of match it, and I think he can do it. The question is, does he want to spend another year or two in college to develop it, or does he want to develop it, bouncing maybe between the G League and the NBA?
Okay, Brad, I'll prep you with a couple tease questions. There was somebody online who suggested that Arizona might be a second-week NCAA tournament team, and Nick Howard asked if Arizona was Final Four ready. Give us your thoughts on that in a moment. Before then, let me tell you about DraftKings and the DraftKings Sportsbook app. For new customers, bet $1 on any team to score in an NFL game. There's an NFL special going on until the 16th. Don't worry. There might be another sport and another special for new customers just around the corner, but get in on DraftKings and have fun with it. If you bet the $1 for new customers only, first team on one team that scores, you'll see the promo on the app, $100 in free bets coming your way. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PHNX. Look for that promo code, PHNX. Bet $1 on any team to score, win $100 in free bets if they score, and they will. You score with promo code PHNX at the DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. 21 plus, Arizona only. And remember, if you have a gambling problem, we don't want you to do that. We know it's addictive. We also know it's fun, and we know you're out there and you're responsible because you're responsible enough to watch us. And we thank you for that. 1-800, but just in case, 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Brad, the metrics like Arizona a lot. After this performance, folks observing Arizona have to like Arizona a lot. How much do you like Arizona in terms of how the tournament might shake down, or what you've seen as far as college basketball is concerned?
Someone we both know, Ann Diaz, who I don't think is watching, but she might be, asked me, this team looks legit to me. Are they legit? And I said, yeah. The question is, are they 3 and 4 seed second weekend legit, or are they 1 or 2 seed legit? I don't know that yet. This is making me lean. So to Nick, can they get to the Final Four? Yeah, I think they can. But we all know that is such a crapshoot. But I think we are now looking at a team. Mike wanted to ask before the season, was this a top 25 team at the end of the year? No, this is a top 15 team at the end of the year, barring just getting figured out. Which I don't see it. I've always thought this was a talented team. So I think unless they somehow get the 4 seed and just a stacked region, this should be a second weekend team. And once you get to the second weekend, it kind of becomes a crapshoot, as we all know. We've certainly seen, look at that team against Illinois, the one we've seen from 2005. That was the best. That was the second best team in America behind North Carolina. They just caught a steamroller at the wrong time. We've seen it over and over with Arizona. Obviously when their best teams did not win championships, and a good team did. So you never know. But yes, I think this team is complete enough that they could make a run. And would I bet on it? maybe if you go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and want to get into the futures, but I certainly think it could be a second weekend team. Obviously, right now, they look like at worst the third team in the Pac-12, and maybe I think you could make an argument they look like the best team in the Pac-12, although UCLA is really good.
I think Andrew has a comment here about how Tennessee and UCLA on the road back-to-back going to show Arizona fans a lot. I think you're going to include USC into that as well. Remember,
and they still got ASU at the end of that road trip.
And a problem, but this was a good start to get an idea of what Arizona is capable of. Again, Illinois is good. And, like you said at the top, I'm not sure that they're going to be that explosive from three-point range, but the fact that they've got two guards who can fill it up, that's a team with really good balance that can be a problem and will be a problem in what you called a grinder conference, but I think it's a good grinder conference. I think there are some really good teams in the Big Ten, and Illinois is going to be in the mix, I think, for a heck of a long time. So if you want to start their point guard back, if you want to start this as the gauntlet, then Arizona definitely got off to a good start. But there's a lot of enjoyable basketball as well over the course of the next 3 weeks or so.
Yeah, remember they got the point guard was out, Cabello. I don't know how you pronounce it, but he's really good. And they didn't have him tonight. But that might also change the dynamic, and they probably wouldn't settle for as many threes if he was out there. But yeah, as we're saying, I actually thought this grinder stretch actually began with Wyoming, because I still think Wyoming's a pretty good basketball team.
Agreed.
I think they're a factor in the Mountain West. I don't know. I've seen people say, well, they're the best. I don't know if they're the best team in the Mountain West. They were undefeated, but they're a tournament caliber team. Illinois is a tournament team, I think, clearly, and they're probably second tier. I think if we're looking at it, it sure looks like Purdue's really, really good. I know they lost to Rutgers.
They are.
That was a road midweek loss on a 3-point shot that probably shouldn't have counted. Ohio State is capable of beating anyone on the right night. Go up and down. Michigan's going to get it together. Illinois is really good. You can never count Michigan State. I know they're a little bit down right now, but that's a great league. The Pac-12, I think, is an okay league at the top. And then there's a huge drop-off, I think, after Washington State, who got upset today.
I think it's a really good league at the top. I think there are some really good teams at the top. I think it's a problem from about 5 down. They don't have the depth that some of the other leagues have, I think, in the middle. However, I think maybe the conference is going to be one of those that you see a lot of improvement throughout the course of the year. One of my arguments, and folks who have watched these podcasts or heard me on some other venues. One of my irritations with the transfer portal is that I think aesthetically it's going to hurt college basketball overall as a whole from November into December and possibly into a good portion of January as well, because everybody's melding teams together. It's weird. Arizona appears to be the exception here that is developing faster than a lot of other teams in a completely unusual situation. You'd expect Arizona to be the poster children for the type of team that was still trying to figure it out and galvanize itself as it moved along. So maybe a team like Oregon State, which has some talent, maybe a team like Oregon, who you figure Altman does this all the time anyway, can give the league a little bit more depth once we get into mid-January and perhaps the beginning of February. But right now, you've got a very good UCLA team who Brad, I think, deserves to be, who, when this all clears out, if UCLA's a 1, 2, or a 3 seed, I'm not going to be surprised.
Not at all.
USC's an absolute pain in the ass on defense. And if they're a 5 or more favorable, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Arizona metrically is playing like a 1 seed, but, if they're in UCLA's category at a 3 or so, I can see that happening too. So I think the top of this league is really good and is going to get seeded favorably. It's just a league that struggles from a depth standpoint, at least right now, that I don't think other conferences are going through those sorts of growing pains. And as a result, you might see a league that only gets 4 berths, but 3 of those berths are 3 seeds or more favorable.
And I think that's what Lenardi has. I think it's 3 and all 3 are top 4 seeds. And I'd have to go double check that. But because like right now he had Washington State, who's typically 4th in most of these rankings out, and he had Oregon out. So yeah, I think the top of the league's good. Again, I think, UCLA on the right night can play with them, as we saw when they played Villanova. I mean, that's a really good Villanova team, and they beat them at Pauley. USC. I again, when the chips are down, I have my doubts about infield, but that's a 20.
You know what?
23-24 win team, though.
He is the most underappreciated coach in this conference. SC has won 25 games or more, I think, 5 of the last 6 years?
Yeah.
It's something ridiculous like that. Yet, we keep looking at Enfield as kind of being, USC sort of an also-ran in this. No, they're not. I mean, not anymore. While it looks scattershot and it looks kind of undisciplined, it works. And now it's worked for a multitude of years. So I think Enfield's doing a pretty good job there.
I do have my doubt. And again, maybe my perception's up. My perception is in close games against comparable talented teams, they tend to lose those. And that's the difference between Andy Enfield and Dana Altman, who, again, I still think even with their struggles, it's about Mick Cronin. His teams seem to gut out those wins. And
we're hoping Tommy Lloyd does the same thing here.
So far, Lloyd's been good, and he's made pushed the right buttons in these close games, and he's found ways. I do want to say a lot of people bashing Miller on the chat on the side, and some of it deserved. Miller won a lot of good games against good teams in close games, and until the end of the tournament run, he was great in the tournament up to a point. And then his teams, I think, started escaping his image. And as I've said, he's a great system coach who got away from his system. But that being said, I really like Tommy Lloyd. I'm glad they have Tommy Lloyd. But I think the revisionist history already of Miller is a little interesting. But again,
although Brad,
this team is so aesthetically pleasing, I'm almost there with you.
See, I kind of want to get into that a little bit more, if you don't mind, because it has been a running theme here with the comments, as you noted. Beforehand, if it's possible, if you could do us a favor out there, you've been kind enough to watch us already. If you could subscribe to the channel on YouTube, that'd be fantastic. It's good for DraftKings, good for us. We hope you enjoy the content, and there are a variety of cool folks within the Arizona pocket at PHNX that are doing a really good job across platforms for a lot of the multitude of teams up in Phoenix, and they've been kind enough to extend it with Mike down here in Tucson, and Mike allows us to be on every now and again and bring the product down to a grinding halt. But if you were kind enough and felt inclined to subscribe on YouTube, that would be fantastic. Again, Brad, that has been a topic of conversation, and an understandable topic of conversation. Mike and I talked about it on this program after the Wyoming game, and one of the things that I brought up was kind of like, you look back at some of the really good Arizona Miller teams, Gordon, Hollis Jefferson, Nick Johnson, and you think, and you feel, and there's a sense of frustration there because you kind of wish Tommy Lloyd was coaching them too. So what is it that Lloyd is doing differently that at least at this stage, even though Miller recruited these guys, it appears that Lloyd understands how to get them to play at a higher level than perhaps Miller could have done at this stage. And again, it's alternative history. I don't know if Arizona would be undefeated at this stage if Miller was the coach too. But clearly, their style of play in a multitude of different areas would have been better. And I'm not sure even some of the players would have been as developed as it appears they are right now.
I will say this. I think when we look back 3-4 years from now, we are going to see that Tommy Lloyd is a better developer of talent than Sean Miller. I think that was it's overrated, his lack of development, but it was an issue. Because guys did develop under him, and a lot of guys did say, but some guys didn't, and too many guys did not develop under Sean Miller. But it's not like I saw one thing where no one ever. No, a lot of guys did. Most of the guys just didn't stay long enough. But I think if you already look at the growth we've already seen from Koloko, Tubelis as well, but Tubelis is a second-year guy. Mathurin, and a lot of guys always said, "What's the best thing about a sophomore? They're no longer freshmen." But Koloko's a 3-year guy. I also think that when you play the wide open style, much like we did, that unless you have a team with no athletes, that more guys fit that system, if that makes sense. At the end of the day, Miller played a very specific system, and I think it could have worked, but he couldn't always get the guys. You mentioned Rondé and Nick and Aaron Gordon. Those were all 5-star guys, but those were 5-star guys who played Miller's system. Defense, rebounding. All three of them were defensive first players. In fact, only Nick was really a polished offensive player. But who did he have to transition to? Alonzo Trier didn't fit the system. Raleigh Alkins, who was supposed to be this tough New York kid, no. You kept getting guys like that, guys who were a little selfish. You had to kind of be unselfish. And now, if we look at this system is very unselfish, but the ball gets around so much,
they all get their touches.
You all get your touches. You didn't in Miller's system. So I think that was the problem. I think there were times where Miller should have settled for Kadeem Allums of the world, but wanted the Alonzo Triers. But Alonzo Trier didn't fit that system.
Would Alonzo Trier fit this system?
I don't know. Athletically, yes. Scoring-wise, yes. Would he have sold out on the defensive? I mean, Tubelis getting down on the floor. I'm not sure Alonzo Trier. Maybe, and maybe it gets contagious. I don't know. But I think this is also, if you look at what we're seeing from Tommy Lloyd, he doesn't hand out those offers. He's only offered a handful of kids because he's very specific, I think. And Lute was too. Lute used to yank offers all the time. If the kid's mom even said something, there was a player went to UCLA where his mom was talking about, can you guarantee shots and starting time? And he's like, he's not going to fit here. It rhymes with Arisa. But that was Lute's system. I remember over eavesdropping Hassan Adams at the Nike All-American camp talking about Indy Eby and how Eby said, I'm going to come in and score 25 a game. And Hassan said, looked at him, he's like, you don't come to Arizona to score 25. You come to Arizona to win 25 and then try to win 6 more. I thought that was an interesting quote from Hassan. So, yeah, I think Lloyd's going to be a little more picky. And if that means picking up a guy who has to spend 3 years here and then finding the right transfer, I think that's his plan. He inherited a team that works very well. And my gut feeling is, we're looking. The 5 starters are all Miller's guys. I think this team would have been very good under Miller as well. They just would have been very, very different. And at the end of the day, so far, do I like what I've seen from Tommy Lloyd? Absolutely. At this point, I'm glad they have Tommy Lloyd, not Sean Miller. But I think Sean Miller's getting bashed a little bit more than he should. Now, I'm interested to see. In some other world, the Schlabach article doesn't go out, and I think Arizona would have been a very different basketball team the last 4 or 5 years. I think that article,
what do you mean?
The fact that they struggled to get their recruits, the recruiting class that never was.
Well, okay. Would I guess it doesn't matter, but
yeah, it doesn't matter.
Maybe this is for another day. But in an alternate universe, is Miller still going to run his Miller style with the players that he wants?
Absolutely.
And Arizona's going to be competitive, or are you going to ultimately see a guy who maybe decides he needs to, pick up the pace a little bit to try to be more effective in the modern template of
he
basketball
kept saying he was
in
going
general.
to and never did.
Right.
So I don't know. You know what?
Clearly, Tommy Lloyd has said that too.
Jed Fish is going to throw to the tight end.
Tight end, right.
Player X is a combo forward.
Mm-hmm.
We've been hearing combo forwards since Lute Olson was here. He had exactly one combo forward, and he ended up playing center, and that was Ricky Anderson, maybe Rayos. But those are just, whatever. We're in the Tommy Lloyd era, and let's rejoice because this is a team that's undefeated. The future is bright. Now, has he brought in the home run recruit yet? No. But if you're a kid watching this style and you don't want to play at Arizona for this style, for a coach who looks like, Lute
he appears to be, Brad, I'll tell you what, he appears to be a good communicator.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. And some of the stuff that I thought was interesting too, his interaction, and it's hard to tell what's being said, how effective it ultimately is, but the way that Lloyd works the refs or communicates with the refs, at least at this stage, is very respectful. Now, take that for what it's worth. There seems to be, Lloyd's approach seems to be always communicating. It doesn't mean he doesn't get pissed off from time to time when things don't go right, but there's a communicating and a respect approach there, and it seems to be that he approaches players and approaches others around him in a very similar way, and it's certainly a different approach on the sidelines, and as this thing moves along, we'll find out how effective it is, but so far, even in that regard, and again, It's tough to observe from television. I'm not right there on the sideline. I don't get a gist. I don't know exactly what he's saying or how he's saying it, but I'll tell you what, it looks good.
We've seen him chew some kids out, but it lasts about 25 seconds. If that, like, I think it was the other night, Pelle Larsson got an earful. And by the end of the earful, Lloyd was smiling, Larsson was smiling, got a pat on the butt. There was no glare. There was no sending him to the end of the bench. And I think you also have to look, Steve Robinson's is reportedly a great communicator. We know Murph a little bit. That's a guy who's always been able to communicate in different ways with different people. Talk, one way to the media, one way to his friends, one way to the kids. I don't know Coach Ricardo at all, but
it is a good point what you're talking about. That this assistant coaching group seems to be fitting in very well too.
And that was Lute's key. Remember, Lute had an assistant who fit every role. And these guys, he had a Roz who was a little cranky, but look at how the guys adore Roz. When Roz was being forced out, every former player and booster came to his defense during that tumultuous time. He had a guy like Rodney Tension, who was kind of like the cool uncle, but who could also MF you to death when he had to. He had a guy like Passner, who was super positive. He's had a KO, who was the disciplinarian. And I think you've got that here. Steve Robinson's the elder statesman. But Steve Robinson still shows up in his $200 Jordans and his Nike. He used to swag out on the recruiting trail. And
$200 Jordan. What did he do? Get him at a thrift stop?
Exactly.
Thrift shop. How much have you? I
haven't shopped Jordans in forever.
Yeah, no kidding.
But you know what I mean. He's a guy who. What is he?
The Brad Allis inflation scale is in full effect right now.
What can I say? But the fact is, these guys all fit a variety of roles, and that's what I think is so key. When I think at some points during Miller's era, a lot of them just took on Miller's kind of personality, and that was good and bad. So be happy we're here now. But again, I think we've got. And we get revisionist history with everyone. We've gone through Tomey revisionist history. Right now, we're kind of in a Rich Rod was way better than we ever thought. And that's what happens with sports and coaches. But I think the Miller bashing, while there's a grain of truth and there's a lot of it's justified, I think it's getting a little blown up because we're so happy with Lloyd. If Lloyd was 6-3 right now, we wouldn't see what we're seeing, but he's not. So let's be thankful for what we have, because so far this has been just a wonderful hire, and just even from the aesthetics, just has been really a lot of fun, because again, it looks like Lute Olson basketball.
Hey, Brad, before we get out of here, Anger Grimm had a question about Aiken not necessarily being in the rotation all that much, playing very little at best. Do you have any insight?
He's not with the team right now. They're calling it personal reasons, which is always a worry, because we've seen Trier had personal reasons, and I don't know what it is, but it could be discipline. It could be legitimately family issues. It could be mental health. I don't want to speculate, but they're saying personal reasons, and he's not with the team right now, and there's no timetable for his return. And that is a blow, because Arizona basically goes 3 deep with bigs. And after that, they have to play small ball. The good news is they play small ball really well.
Brad, it was Arizona with the win and the point spread, not the point spread, the over-under. Did you take Arizona and the over on your DraftKings app as your DraftKings pick of the week?
Being on the road with travel issues, I took the under.
What? You took the really?
Yeah.
That was your DraftKings pick of the week. Somebody on the other side here, and this is hilarious given our history. We did this in a pregame show we did this bit in a pregame show a long time ago where we used fake money in that pregame show. Our friend Rob Lance, Brad Allis, and I all did something, and we picked games every week. I was out of money after about 3 bets. So
she was at the point where I
was borrowing from Monsters.
He was betting less than $1. He's like, I got 75 cents on Air Force to cover. I've got 33 cents on the over in the Middle Tennessee, Eastern Washington. And we're like, oh, yeah, no. Mike and I, we didn't do great, but we were still betting.
Braden, yeah, it was actually Rob.
Yeah.
You and Rob did very well. Which,
we did okay.
Which means
okay.
now.
Rob did great.
Now, if you guys get the DraftKings app, I mean, you're going to load it up and your pick of the week. You can listen to Shu at specific times like today when he took the Wildcats and the over and even parlayed that together because there are some folks out there who recognize that this guy right here is the so-called and rightful king of parlays. Yes. All right, Brad, before we get out of here, final thoughts on today's game and what you're looking forward to as Arizona takes it on from here.
I don't know how you can take anything really negative other than maybe the 3-point shooting for Illinois. Arizona went on the road, Ubered. Yes, they Ubered to Champaign from Indianapolis. I don't know how far that is. It's not close. It's not like Ubering from Champaign from Chicago, which is like a 35, 40 minute. Yeah.
Bummer. I wasn't driving that one.
No. I guess someone looked it up. They said it was $125 during normal times.
Wow,
that doesn't sound right.
No,
yeah.
That sounds cheap.
And it was like at 3 in the morning.
I would have
during a tornado
times. Oh,
yeah. So
tough weather back there. I know.
Again, you Uber there. You play a good to very good basketball team in a awfully good environment. I mean, those students, again, the entire Big Ten might be top to bottom the best fan base because ACC has a couple weaker spots. Again, I don't know how good Northwestern is, but you go to most of those. That's a good fan base in Illinois. They were packed. They were ready. They didn't like some of the things that was said by Arizona media this week, so they were frothing at the mouth a little bit. And Arizona not only went in and played well, they won. So I think it's a huge win. I think it's a character-building win. I think the fact that they were able to weather a 19-0 run, weather the foul trouble with Dalen Terry, although I think we're learning what he means on defense for this team because the first half, they missed him. And the fact that Kerr Kriisa was able to just basically turn it on from having a poor first half and had, 16, 18 in the second half, hit a key free throw, stared down the cheerleaders. He's the guy, again, if he played for UCLA, we would hate him.
Oh, yeah.
We'd hate him more than Capono. The fact that he plays for Arizona,
exactly.
We love him.
Everybody else in the conference is going to despise him. And our pal Mike Luke, who runs this thing, loves his comparison. So in honor of Mike Luke, let me throw one at you, Brad Allis. Danny Ainge.
I see that. To me, he's... Yeah, I mean...
Because you had to hate him.
But Danny Ainge, you hated because he was scrappy, a little cheap, an agitator. Whereas I think part of Kriisa's thing is he's cocky. He's a pretty boy. I mean, he really would have fit in with some of those UCLA teams in the 2000s. You could see him like hanging out with the sweatband with Capono and those guys. But yeah, I think from a hatred standpoint, he might go down as one of the top, most Arizona hated players.
It's not a bad position to be in, is it? No. Because if you're one of the most hated players in the history of a given team, that means your team's doing good. You're on a good team.
Absolutely. And again, he's a good player. He's got that swag. I think it gets contagious. And that's what makes this team fun. I mean, the best Arizona teams were always likable, yet also hateable. Like I'm guessing most fan bases hated Ricky Anderson. I'm guessing most fan bases hated Salim, two of my all-time favorite Wildcats. I'm guessing they probably hated Luke Walton. I think they're going to
definitely Miles Simon.
Yeah. I think they're going to hate a lot of these Wildcats, and that's a good thing because, the best heels, if we're going with our wrestling comparison, usually have the title, right. And that's why you hate them. And I think this Arizona team has a chance to make a run at the title.
And Jose just mentioned the O'Bannon brothers, which is an excellent one too. But hopefully you guys, thanks for the comments. We love your comments. We don't hate any of you. Well, Mike and Reno is borderline, but beyond that, we love them all. And we appreciate all of the comments and you guys spending some time with us on a Saturday night where we all get to talk about Wildcat basketball a little bit. Huge win for the U of A. You folks can enjoy the remainder of your Saturday night, and Mike will be back with this for Arizona's next matchup in what we hope is another Wildcat W. For DraftKings and the DraftKings Sports app, and for Brad Allis, this is John Schuster. Have a great night.